The conference room lights buzzed faintly. Laptops open, eyes half closed. No one noticed the girl in the back taking notes until she stood up. The girl's name was Naomi Briggs, a 25-year-old forensic technician fresh out of a low-ranked public university. She had barely made it through the doors of the Chicago Police Department's Forensic Analysis Unit, working nights on tedious lab reports no one cared to read. She was quiet, methodical, and invisible in a room full of men who wore their badges like armor. Naomi had learned early that people mistook silence for weakness. So, she let them, until a body dropped, and everything changed. The case began with a phone call that cut through the night. "We have a homicide. High profile. You'll want your A-team on it." The victim was Jordan Malik, a well-known civil rights attorney and rising political star. Found dead in his penthouse apartment. Shot execution style. No signs of forced entry. The city shook. Headlines rolled in within hours. Pressure came down from the mayor's office. And the prime suspect? Naomi's best friend, Immani Gria. Immani was a community organizer, a firebrand with a following, and a former paralegal in Jordan's office. They'd had a falling out, something about a misfiled report and a harassment claim Jordan buried. She'd quit, made noise on social media, and 3 weeks later, he was dead. The evidence was airtight, suspiciously so. A hoodie with her DNA, gunpowder residue in her car, a text message that read, "You'll get what's coming." Naomi sat at her desk, staring at the photos, the timestamps, the neat stack of forensic reports. Everything was too clean, too perfect, like someone had studied the system and knew exactly what evidence to plant and where. But no one wanted questions. They wanted a conviction. "We're not looking for interns with ideas," the manager laughed when Naomi asked to recheck the ballistics. "We're building real solutions." So Naomi did what she always did. She worked the night shift. Alone, unbothered, with full access to the lab. She started digging. The first clue was a microscopic inconsistency in the GSR, gunshot residue, found in Immani's car. It didn't match the chemical composition of the weapon used. The lab report had been edited. Sloppy white, assuming no one would look. Naomi looked. Then she looked into the chain of custody and found something else. A technician named Craig Hollister had handled the evidence just before the submission. Naomi didn't know him. He worked the same floor, different lab. So she waited until he clocked out. Then she accessed the lab security footage, and her hands began to shake. Craig never entered the evidence room that night, but his name was on 3 different reports. Either someone had used his credentials, or he had something to hide. Naomi filed her own internal report. Quietly, anonymously, she submitted a reanalysis of the GSR, challenged the hoodie DNA with a cross-contamination possibility, and raised a flag on the chain of custody. Then her badge was deactivated. Her ID wouldn't open the lab. She was locked out of every system. They called her into the office 2 days later. 3 people were in the room. Her supervisor, an HR rep, and Detective Jared Fisk, the case lead on Jordan Malik's murder. "Naomi," he said, folding his hands, "we've received a concerning report regarding your recent activities. There's reason to believe you've tampered with critical evidence in an active investigation." "What?" She blinked. "I reported inconsistencies. I didn't tamper. There's footage of you in the lab after hours, without authorization, and we traced some unusual queries to your login, accessing restricted case files." She opened her mouth, closed it. They were framing her too. They suspended her, effective immediately. She walked out of the building with a box of her belongings and the growing realization that whoever was behind this, whoever wanted Immani to take the fall, wasn't going to stop. And if she didn't figure it out fast, they'd bury the truth with both of them. The shift came quietly, not with drama, but with strategy. Naomi started working from home, digging through backup data, public files, anything she'd downloaded before her suspension. She mapped out timelines, cross-referenced reports, and uncovered a second unknown DNA profile on the gun, flagged in an earlier test but excluded from the final file. Then she remembered the body cam footage. Every officer at the scene wore one, and sometimes they forget to delete. She filed a Freedom of Information request for the footage from the first responders. It took a week. When it arrived, it was corrupted. Deliberately, but not fully. One frame, just one, was intact. A glove hand placing the hoodie behind a sofa. Not Immani. Too tall. The patch on the sleeve, a private security firm. Naomi traced the patch to Delta Apex, a controversial firm hired by the city to assist with high-profile cases. And guess who had former ties to Delta Apex? Detective Jared Fisk. One more thing, she said, turning the screen toward the freelance journalist who agreed to meet her in a cafe under a fake name. This is what they missed. The journalist, Sophia Rangel, had spent the last 5 years exposing corruption in law enforcement. She wasn't impressed easily, but when she saw the footage, she leaned in. That's enough for a public inquiry. Naomi nodded. Then let's make it public. The article dropped 3 days later. The perfect frame job. Insider evidence suggests mishandling in Malik murder case. Photos. Timeline. Lab inconsistencies. A pixelated still from the video. It went viral. The police department issued a statement calling it reckless speculation. But behind closed doors, panic spread. 2 days later, Craig Hollister resigned. A week later, Detective Fisk went on medical leave. Then came the subpoena and the whistleblower testimony. Not Naomi's. Craig's. He cracked under pressure, admitted the orders came from above. Said they needed a fast conviction to calm the city. Said Fisk orchestrated the evidence placement and had ties to Malik's political rivals. Immani was released. Charges dropped. Case reopened. Naomi was reinstated. But she didn't return. She started her own private forensics consulting firm, TruthWorks, to work on wrongful conviction cases. Quietly, methodically, the room, once buzzing with dismissal, fell into silence. For the first time, everyone was listening. She wasn't just another girl with a dream. She was a woman who changed the rules. Naomi didn't celebrate. While the city applauded Immani's release, the truth sat uneasily in Naomi's chest because the case wasn't closed. It was cracked open. The arrest of Detective Fisk made headlines. So did the internal review. But beneath the noise, Naomi saw the patterns forming. Something deeper, systemic. This wasn't just a rogue detective gone off-book. This was infrastructure, and the body count was growing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The voice on the other end was brittle, tired. You don't know me, but I read what you did. My son's in prison, 8 years now, for something he didn't do. They used the same lab. Naomi paused. What was the case? Daniel Proctor. Armed robbery. No fingerprints. Just a partial shoe print. But the forensics unit said it was a match. They used it to convict him. Naomi pulled up the case. Scanned the report. The shoe print analysis had been done by Craig Hollister. Her pulse quickened. She met the woman, Angela Proctor, at a laundromat in Bronzeville. Small, wrinkled, a survivor in every sense of the word. She slid over a folder held together with scotch tape and quiet rage. Inside, trial transcripts, case notes, court exhibits. A forensic report Naomi recognized instantly. Not just the format, but the language. It mirrored the Jordan Malik file almost exactly. She didn't say anything at first. Just flipped through slowly, heartbeat rising. I'm not crazy, am I? Angela whispered. No, Naomi replied. You're not. She took the folder home and worked until sunrise, comparing Daniel Proctor's trial materials with internal forensic templates. It was a carbon copy, the same filler language, the same phrasing, the same statistical manipulation of evidence probability. Naomi knew what this was. A template frame job. Mass-produced guilt. For whoever they needed gone. She wasn't supposed to know. But now that she did, she couldn't look away. Then came the knock. It was 2:12 a.m. Naomi froze. Looked through the peephole. No one. But on the ground, a box. No label. No address. Just a flash drive. She plugged it into a clean laptop. The files were encrypted. But one opened. Surveillance footage. Grainy. Dark. A man in a gray hoodie walking down an alley. Then, a second figure stepping out from behind a dumpster. Gun drawn. A single shot. The man collapsed. Timestamp. 2 days before Malik's murder. Location: near an old Delta Apex storage facility. The killer? Naomi recognized the gate. The build. The badge number partially visible on the hip holster. It wasn't Fisk. It was Captain Raynord Beckett, the head of internal affairs. Naomi's hands trembled as she copied the file to 2 external drives and erased all traces from the laptop. Someone wanted her to see this. But why? Was it a warning or a handoff? She started mapping the connections. Beckett had quietly replaced 3 homicide detectives in the last year. 2 of them had signed off on lab reports Naomi now questioned. A third one, dead. Suicide, allegedly. The pieces were falling into place. But putting them together would cost her everything. She met with Sophia again, this time in an abandoned art gallery being renovated for a nonprofit. Dust floated in the light. The energy was tense. Naomi laid out the files, one by one. "This isn't about one case," she said. "It's a pattern. They are rotating detectives, controlling forensics, fast-tracking convictions." "Why?" Sophia whispered. Naomi leaned in. "To protect city contracts. Delta Apex got its funding from crime clearance rates. The higher their success metrics, the more contracts they locked in. Every conviction, real or not, was money." Sophia sat back. And Malik? He was going to run for Attorney General. He promised to defund private policing and reopen 10 closed cases, including Daniel Proctor's. Jesus. Exactly. Sophia pitched the story to 3 major outlets. All passed. One editor replied, "Too much speculation. We can't afford to be sued." So they did it themselves. They built a microsite, animated the timelines, layered the audio from Naomi's lab notes with crime scene visuals and body cam footage. They called it the algorithm of guilt. Within 48 hours, it hit 3 million views. Within a week, the city council called an emergency hearing. The backlash was instant and ugly. Angela Proctor's house was vandalized. Naomi's consulting license was flagged for review. Sophia's website was hit with a DDoS attack. Then came the anonymous tip to police. They arrested Naomi, charged her with obstruction and tampering with official records. She sat in a holding cell, her hands cold, her heart steady. They thought she'd fold. They didn't know her. At her bail hearing, the prosecutor smirked. "Ms. Briggs believes she's above protocol, that she alone decides which cases are flawed." Naomi stood, calm, centered. "Actually," she said, "I only revealed what your department tried to bury. Truth doesn't need permission." The judge granted bail. The courtroom buzzed. Outside, protesters held signs. "Justice for Daniel Proctor." Naomi exposed the lie. "Investigate Delta Apex." The shift was happening. A whistleblower came forward, an officer who'd worked security for Delta Apex. He admitted to planting evidence, suppressing footage, falsifying witness statements. Captain Beckett resigned. His home was raided, and in the back of his garage freezer, they found the original weapon used to kill Jordan Malik. It had no prints, but it had trace fibers from a Delta Apex uniform. That was the missing piece. Daniel Proctor's case was reopened. Charges vacated. He walked out after 8 years behind bars, dazed but free. Angela cried so hard, she collapsed in his arms. Naomi didn't speak at the press conference. She stood behind them, watching, then quietly walked away. Later that night, she got a message from a blocked number. "You did what no one else dared to, but you haven't seen the whole system yet." Attached was a file, a case she'd never heard of, a new name. Naomi stayed at the screen, her jaw set. The work wasn't done. They told her to back down. She made them regret it. They underestimated her. Then they tried to contain her. Now, they were running out of places to hide. The file that arrived in Naomi's inbox had no name, no origin. Just a code, Case X712. She opened it. One name stood out immediately, Lena Varga. An immigrant, late 30s, arrested for allegedly killing her landlord during a rent dispute. The case had been closed for over a year. Conviction secured in 72 hours. Media had called it an open-and-shut homicide. But the report told a different story, and a familiar one. Same lab formatting, same fabricated timestamps, same missing surveillance footage. Naomi's gut clenched. They were still doing it. She reached out to Lena's public defender, a burnt-out man named Eli Wasserman, who'd handled 128 felony cases in a single year. He barely remembered Lena. "You think she's innocent?" he asked, flipping through Naomi's notes. "I think she was silenced. Like the rest of them. She had no family, no press, no one paid attention." "That's the point," Naomi replied. "She was easy to bury." Naomi started working the case in secret. She couldn't trust the courts, and she certainly couldn't trust the department. Not after Beckett. Not after Fisk. Not after finding out that Craig Hollister, her old lab rival, had quietly signed on as a forensic advisor for a new private firm under a different name. They were repackaging the lie. But Naomi had learned how to fight smart. She brought in her own team. Not cops. Not lawyers. Data scientists. Coders. Journalists. They built a case simulator, comparing forensic reports from over 300 city cases. The algorithm detected structural anomalies, identical phrases, recycled charts, cloned lab notes. It flagged 43 cases as highly suspect. Lena's was one of them. So was Daniel Proctor's. So was Jordan Malik's. A map formed, a quiet epidemic of convictions designed to boost conviction rates and suppress community disruption. It wasn't just corruption. It was policy. Naomi stood in front of a whiteboard full of photos, names, and red threads connecting them. Her small apartment had become a war room. Immani walked in, holding takeout. "You're not sleeping again," she said gently. "There's no time. You can't do this alone." Naomi turned, eyes fierce. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." She was right. Her work had started a movement. On a rainy Thursday in October, TruthWorks held its first public tribunal. Not a courtroom. Those had failed. A converted theater space with folding chairs, projectors, and truth. Formerly incarcerated people spoke. Families testified. Naomi sat silently on the edge of the stage, listening. Then she stood. "They told us we couldn't question their reports. That to challenge the system was to disrespect it. But what do you call a system that lies to win?" The room erupted. Footage of the tribunal went viral. Again. This time, international outlets picked it up. The state tried again to silence her. Cease and desist letters. Threats of license revocation. An audit. A fabricated complaint. And finally, someone tried to break into her home. They failed. She'd installed motion-activated cameras weeks earlier. One clear image, a masked man, government-issue boots, badge outlined beneath his coat. She leaked it online with a caption, "I'm not afraid, and I have backups." The city exploded. A federal investigation launched. The mayor denied knowledge. The chief of police resigned. Delta Apex's assets were frozen. But that wasn't the win Naomi wanted. The real victory came in courtroom 4B on a chilly November morning, when Lena Varga, thin and pale, stood before the judge. Naomi sat in the gallery, watching. The judge read the ruling. All charges vacated. Ms. Varga is hereby released. No press conference. No reporters. Just quiet freedom. Lena turned, found Naomi in the crowd. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply nodded once, grateful. Understood. Naomi walked out alone. Her phone buzzed. A new number. A new file. No words. Just a name. Martinez, Jamal. Convicted, 2015. Evidence, ballistics. Her next case. The fight wasn't over. The system wasn't fixed. But the silence had been broken. And in a world designed to overlook the truth, Naomi Briggs had become the one thing it couldn't ignore. They tried to silence her. She made them listen. And she wasn't done yet.